What is up, Bomb Squad? Welcome to the Burndown YouTube channel. So today's video is going to be a little different. What I'd like to do today is kind of deep dive into the Brushless Silverado PWM fan and the holder that I make. And then after I go over stuff verbally, kind of show you around the engine bay of my car, since it is put together enough to kind of showcase it. We will jump on Holley because that is the software that I use. A lot of you guys might, and if you don't, you could at least stick around and watch it, because some of the settings and things are going to pertain to the software that you use. If you use a different ECU, PCM, whatever, and it's controllable, you could take some of the settings there and then obviously apply it to that. So let's get started. Hopefully you clicked on this because you either interested or you have one of these bad boys. So this is a 15-inch Silverado truck fan, and it is brushless, and I make this handy dandy holder right here in my home garage, and my boys over at War ship these out for me, and they also do all the hardware, pigtail, all that fun stuff. So what I supply you with, or War supplies you with, is we make the actual holder itself. We give you all the hardware to mount the fan motor, the fan to the shroud of your choice. You were supposed to have a shroud with this. Or for this, I should say, this is the fan holder. That's why I don't call it a shroud. And then we supply a flying lead with about 3 feet of pigtail that has the correct plug for the motor. So we give you all that stuff, and we give you a tap, because depending if you get a new motor, there are no threads in it, and you don't want to break the hardware off trying to insert it and take it out. Or if you decide to be a little cheaper, you're a little on the budget side, and you're like, I'll just get one from a junkyard and rock that till I have money for a new one, or that's just good enough for my project. Those threads don't go all the way through. We use hardware that's a little bit longer, just to make sure that we keep those fan motors in place, so you still want to run that tap through it. So that is a look at it. We could probably fire it off here. I don't know if the video will really do it justice on how much air it moves, and I don't have a little air meter thing, but I can say this about them at this point. We've moved almost 100 of these things, I want to say, roughly. And before they went out to the general public, I picked specific friends that build cars and drive cars and use cars and are familiar with Holley. And I said, here guys, go beat on this thing, because my car wasn't ready. And I was like, we're getting ready to get these things launched, and we got to get them tested. So those all got high marks. Everything was good. We sold them to the public, the general public. We used them on some of our own vehicles before that as well. But we just got back from Rocky Mountain Race Week Mega Week, and there were several drag and drivers on there that had these. And if you don't know what a drag and drive is, it is a week-long drag race where you drive the car from track to track. It's usually across multiple states. Some of us tow little trailers, and they overload and pack their race car, because you can't trailer your rig, you have to drive it. And typically, when you have to drive to and fro and wherever, the weather's against you, it's hot, sometimes rain, it's whatever. I mean, it is really a testament to your cooling system in your car and all those types of things. And we got flying remarks across the board with all of them. So with that being said, my car runs, and I've had time to work on my fan strategy, which I'm going to share with you guys, kind of what I like to do. But then I have another example for my buddy Jason. He has his fan strategy, and then I have an old fan strategy. So that's the nice thing about this, is there's different ways to control it. So if you're into, tuning and working on the car, and you want to get down to the nitty-gritty and have it do exactly what you want, this is for you. And if you're not, there's a really simple way where you just tell it to turn on, tell it to turn off. Life is gravy, and that's probably going to be for a lot of people. So before we get into it, let's go over some pros and cons. Why would you want to put one of these in your car? Well, I made a quick list here. Some of the pros and cons are, it is more power for less amps. So these fan motors actually make more power, but they draw less amps because it's a more efficient design. So you're going to get more for less, essentially, which you really don't get, especially with horsepower and things. But in this case, it actually works out well. Wide open, these things only pull, I want to say they pull less than 25 amps wide open per unit, which if you've had like a Spall or any other brand, like a regular brush fan, you know that especially on startup, they pull a lot of amps. So this isn't going to shock the system, and it's not going to overload your alternator either. And speaking of that, soft start. So these, the fan itself, it will actually register. Like I said, we could probably catch it on video. It'll register before it goes. because there are no brushes. So it has to find center before it will spin, right? So when it does that, it finds it and then it spins up slowly, again, not to shock the system. So you get that soft start, so you're not putting a gigantic load on everything. They are variable speed. That's what the PWM function is, and we will go over that more in the software. But you can essentially tell it how hard to run and what target to turn on and off at. I have on here, it says moves a ton of air. That is due to the blade design, which, let me show you. I have one sitting over here. On the OEM style blades, they are a thick, like paddle blade, right? Oh, lost my hardware. So it's a thicker paddle blade. As we're on the aftermarket ones, you're getting like the real thin, skinny ones. And you might be able to spin the hell out of that thing, that's great. But the objective is to move air. It's not to see who can spin their fan the fastest, right? So you get these nice thick paddles, so they are moving air. So you get the efficient motor and the bigger paddles. You put those two together, it's like peanut butter and jelly. So we've got that, the blade design, and then the price. So what's nice about these, when you go with an OEM fan, because there are OEM cars in abundance, they make things in thousands and hundreds of thousands of units. I don't know, I mean at least hundreds of thousands, I would guess, right, for parts and for the original vehicles and all those sorts of things. So the option you have is you can get them new from like Rock Auto or online retailers, or you can go to the junkyard and get yourself a good used set of fans for a big discount. Generally, it's typically about half. I mean, depending, everybody's junkyards are different, but it's usually about half of what it would cost new. Or you can get backup units there or whatever, and you can just buy the fan motor, or you can get the whole plastic piece. That's up to you. But they're available, like I said, either new, and you can pay full pop and get the new shiny unit, or you can just go source a used one. So maybe the trick would be, if you're on kind of a budget, you get the fan holder. It has everything you need to install it. You can get a used unit, and that'll get you up and running. And then later on, if it takes a crap because it's used, or maybe it just lasts forever, or you just want to upgrade to a new and have a backup, you know, we'll get you covered on that. So the other nice thing about that, speaking of backup, is that fan motor comes out, so you don't have to carry the whole shroud. Like if you wanted to carry a spare, say you're doing drag and drive, typically, if, like the old school ones, you'd have this big 16-inch fan, and you got to pack that and put it somewhere. These ones, it's a compact little motor, and it's basically the size of the center of this, right? So without the blades, you just have that portion, so you can technically carry a backup fan with you, and it's pretty convenient. So those are kind of the pros, just rambling real quick off the top of my head, shoot from the hip, from a little notepad. But there are also cons, right? Everything has a trade-off. You don't just get everything good and then I'm going to sit here and tell you, oh, it's the best thing ever, you need to go do it. We'll give you some of the cons. So one of the major cons is the thickness, and you can see it here, and then you can see it on my holder. So they mount from the back, so your whole fan is inside this essentially, and that is due to the motor design. It is basically backwards. It doesn't have the armature. Everything's on the outside, and the inside kind of stays centered, I guess you could say. So typically that puts the magnets and everything, makes them larger, and then it makes them kind of wider. So this thing measures in at about 2.5 inches. Let's put a tape on it so I'm not lying to y'all. Yeah, let's see. Yeah, so we're like 2.5. That's what I thought it was. So this is 2.5, and then with your fan shroud, this is my fan shroud, typically you need at least like a 1/2 inch. That's why this is 2.5. So you're looking at like a 3-inch depth overall, minimal. And if you can go like a 3/4, 1 inch, you're gonna get better flow in my opinion. So I would do that if you could, but then again, that gets into accessories. It all depends. Everybody's situation is different. I built this whole thing here. My buddy helped me tube it all out. I have all the room to play with, and we accounted for that, so it's a little easier. But in a stock application, you might be trying to kind of squeeze room where you're gonna get in where you fit in, right? Another con is a plastic shroud. So if you buy this factory style, it's all plastic. Everything's plastic. It usually has 2 holders. So if you wanted to put a single on a car and you had a Chevy Silverado shroud, like, good luck. You're gonna have to figure out how to stick the plastic on whatever you got, and you're gonna have to make it work. I'm sure you can make it happen. I'm sure there are guys that are resourceful, and if that's your jam and you don't care and you just want to zip tie it to the thing and have it run, you are more than welcome to do it, and watch a video for this whole deal or whatever. But I encourage you to make life easier, and then obviously to help me and the channel and everything else, you get a nifty handy dandy holder. You look good, it's aluminum, and it does its purpose, and you can mount it kind of how you want it, where you want it, right? The PWM signal is the signal that is generated to turn the fan on, and the reason I counted that as a negative because some of you guys are old school and you have a carburetor or whatever application, or you have a stock PCM, and I've already had people reach out and they want to run it, and I don't have a controller as of yet. I use the Holley software and my ECU to drive that. I know other major brand ECUs, probably like Haltech, and I don't even know what else is out there at this point because I've been on Holley forever, but I know Haltech is a major one. I think there's Fuel Tech. I'm sure they can PWM fans, so all the major ones would probably control it. But as far as a standalone controller, I don't have that licked yet. If I do, I will let you guys know. I'll leave it in the description, but I do not have that as of yet. So I'm counting it as a negative because it makes it harder for the average guy to just slap one of these in anything. And then the last one I would say a negative on the fans is the wiring connection, because it is a 3-pin, and usually each fan has its own connector, and it's going to be like a special deal unless you get it out of like the junkyard and you sourced it and you could pull the pigtail and all the stuff yourself. If you just want to rock out and bought one of these, you're not going to find the connector because it's a special connector. It's a pain in the butt. You might be able to, maybe you could source it, you could Google it, and somebody would have it depending on how popular of a fan it is. But if you just grabbed any willy-nilly fan, if you didn't cut and have that little piece, or say you bought one new and it's obviously not going to come with that, I don't know. You know, I'm not a super wiring guy or nothing like that, so I'm sure there's places you could find all those connectors and learn all about it, but I didn't. So the guys from War tackled that. They found the connector, and we make all of our own flying leads in-house. So those are the negatives, and I'll go over it again because I rambled a bunch. So I'd say size is kind of a negative. The plastic shrouds are a negative. The PWM signal, depending if you don't have anything to generate it, that could be a deal breaker for a lot of guys. And then the wiring connections, right? And I know that a lot of you guys don't like wiring, so speaking of that, let's jump on to that, just that, install. Let's jump over to install, and then basics on, I know this thing's hard to see, but it is a 3-wire connection, right? So it's a 3-wire connection. There's power, ground, and then your signal. I have it zip tied onto here. It comes up, and I have mine going around and then over for the signal. And then the power, I actually have it coming down here, and it goes to my starter, right? So the power for the fan actually goes down underneath to my starter. So if you're wondering why does it go to your starter, well, because it's brushless, it won't do anything until you send it a signal. So it doesn't turn on, it doesn't do anything, it doesn't draw amps, it just hangs out. So you can wire it directly to a power source, but what I will say is you have to fuse it accordingly. Like I said, these, I would probably put them on the 30 amp fuse. Wide open, they only draw, it's a little over like 20, 22 is from what I have found. Maybe other people have found different. And then also be mindful of the length of the run, right? If you're going to power this and your battery's in the trunk and you think you're going to take a home run power lead all the way back, your amp draw may be a little bit different and whatnot, obviously for the length of the run and all that fun stuff. But we give you enough to basically go to, if you had a battery mount up front, or if you want to do like the starter. And then I have fusible links on mine, so I use that as the fuse. But again, you can put the fuse in, put it in line wherever you want it. Be mindful with practice, your practices and your wiring and stuff, because obviously you don't want to burn your car up and do dumb stuff. You know, nobody wants that. And then the small lead is going to go to your signal, and that goes into your ECU. So again, everybody's setup is different. I'm just kind of showing you what mine looks like. Mounting is pretty straightforward, right? On the fan, it has these little mounting ears, and there's 4 of them, and then there's 3 arms, right? So the motor gets bolted in, this gets sandwiched in between, so it goes the plate, the motor, and then this sandwiches that in between the arm for structure, and then it kind of caps it to make it a little prettier. And then this doesn't necessarily have to be mounted in this configuration. That's how I designed it, where you would just put one here with this up in the center. But if you have things in the way, say this comes out or stuff moves around and you have to clock it, you can do that. And if you have to run your wire, if you have to run out to the side, you configure it however you want it. It'll run in whatever configuration you want to put it in. And then also, say this thing came out and you had to clock it and it would fit, but it was interfering, you can take and cut a little bit of this out. It's not going to hurt nothing. I wouldn't make it really thin, but if you had to put, you know, a crescent or whatever to clear some hoses or routing or whatever, I would clock it so the arms were were clear, and then you could just kind of dig into it. So that all that stuff may dictate how you actually fit it in your vehicle. And like I said, everybody's stuff is going to be different, so I can't really account for that. I'm just giving you some pointers and letting you know some of the stuff that I saw. Maybe we can put some pictures of different configurations that I saw, especially like at race week. So it was really neat to see a bunch in the wild. So what else do we have? Mounting options too. So the other thing I get asked about is shrouds, right? Because this thing's kind of big. If you look, it's sized, I sized my radiator appropriately to my fan, so my core size is actually larger than my fan. But every once in a while, like my buddy Anthony Harville, his core size was short, right? I think it was like a 15-inch core or something, and the fan is like 16 inches in circumference. So what he did is he just mounted it up, and then he hung the bottom portion off, and then you just block that bottom portion off, right? Because you don't want it sucking air from, you know, you want it sucking air through the radiator. So if it's hanging past the radiator, you just block that portion of the fan off, so that way it's drawing air through the radiator, if that makes sense. So you can hang it off. That's not really going to be that detrimental. Obviously, you don't want it overhanging a ton if you don't have to, but if it doesn't fit essentially on the size of the core, you're like, oh, it's too big for the core, just hang it down. You can hang it off a little bit. It's not the end of the world. It's really not going to affect it too much. And like I said, you just block that portion of the fan where it's rotating off, and you know, on the back side of it, so it's not drawing air from outside, and it'll be fine. Like I said, several people have had to kind of do that, and it is what it is. You know, it's half a dozen one, 10 of the other. You could run typically the people that have that problem have like a 12-inch fan, but we don't make a 12-inch fan setup. And then I find that a single 15 is going to be, the 12s, depending on what you get, they are pretty good. But if you have a single 15 that had to hang down a little bit, I would just run that. It's not that big of an issue. So you can do that. I explained that you can kind of cut in and carve into stuff if you need to. And then the other thing is on the arms, like I think I showed you here, but that was the other portion too, is there's a little piece down here, and that's to zip tie the wires to. Like, I think people get confused. It looks like a little question mark. So you wrap this around, you zip tie the wire, because there's no protection for the wire here, so I don't want them flopping around, right? So I zip tied it here, and then you zip tie it to the arm here. And this arm protects the wire. It keeps it in place, and then this thing's spinning. If anything happens, breaks or whatever, it's not going to hit that wire that you're probably going to have. It should be fused, but it's going to be live pretty much full time. So you want to be mindful and take care of that thing and wrap it up and keep it safe. So that is that. Let me pull the laptop out. I'm going to apologize now. I have a dinosaur of a laptop that I tune, right? And I will film it with the camera, and I will do my best. Maybe I'll be able to take some sort of screenshots or captures if I really have to, but we'll walk you through some stuff, and the screen might not be the best, but you should hopefully get what we are doing with it. So let's do that. Let's pull the laptop out, and then I'm going to walk you through all the brand new people, so you can fast forward this part, on how to set it up, get the fan, and get all the strategies there, because when you have a Holley and you fire it off for the first time, you don't even have the options. So I'm going to show you how to do all that stuff, and then we will move into established strategies and how that works. And then what I can do, I have a little bit of fuel in the car, we can plug it into mine, and then we can kind of go live on it, and I'll show you kind of how it actually functions, and then we'll get this thing wrapped. So let me fire up the laptop, and I will point it at the ugly screen, and we will go over it. All right, so let's get started. This would be the equivalent of you doing the Game Boy tune, getting the car to basically like run, but you need to get things going. So we're going to go with my buddy Larry's startup tune, right? So if you look up here, there's no I/O function, right? So it doesn't even exist, so you couldn't do anything, so you'd be confused immediately. So what you want to do is you do your Game Boy tune, you get the car kind of fired off, or you at least get this far with it, and then you'll go to Toolbox, Add Individual Configuration, and then you go down here to I/O, right? Click Open, and then just Default. So bam, now your little I/O guy pops up, right? So now we can click this, and we can configure. So here's your inputs are here, and then outputs. So the way you can think of these is your input is stuff that needs to talk to the computer and tell it what's going on, and your outputs are your computer telling things to do stuff, right? So an input and an output. if we go to our pin map, I want to share this with you guys. Oh, it's not even configured. Oh yeah, so outputs. So yeah, inputs and then outputs. So this already has electronic fan 1 and fan 2. So they'd be up here. They're going to be like this if you open this up. That's because they are configured from your basic I/O tab. So if you go to the computer and then basic I/O, it has fans. It's going to want you to have your fans, right? So if you uncheck these, it'll get rid of that so you're not confused. And then AC shutdown, I'm not going to get all crazy into the AC stuff, but if you do have AC and you want to configure it, this is going to have to be done in your advanced table, but you're going to have to do the things for the AC because you will need the AC kick and you will need like the TPS shut off and all that stuff. So hit me up. I can kind of go over that stuff with you later or send you stuff, but I don't want to do that in this. I just want to get the guys that need a fan up and running to get their fan rolling, right? So you click your I/O, you go to inputs, is here. It's obviously not an input, it's an output, right? We want to tell the computer to do something. So we're going to name it. I'm going to call it PWM fan, do caps, fan, right? So we name it PWM fan, click enter, and then you click enable. Boom, and then that makes this box live, right? So you come over here, and these are your options. You have PWM negative, ground, CAN ground, and CAN PWM. We're not using CAN settings, and it's not a solid ground because it's not a normal fan, it's a PWM fan. So you click PWM, and then it's going to say, hey dummy, you got to do additional things, and we'll click OK. And this is where the magic happens over here. This is where you configure it, right? So this is the start of it, and then you have these tabs here. The ones we're going to worry about are input triggers, and then we'll do PWM setup. But first, input triggers. Let's just do basic stuff. We're not going to get froggy, but I will show you some other setups. But just to get you going, if you wanted to simply turn it on and off, you don't have switched inputs. This is like a switch, an actual, if you wanted to flip a switch to do it. And then you can have and. So this doesn't matter here, but it will if you had a switch because it would want to see both. So I always make this or because it will do either one. And then we're going to give it parameters to run by, right? So we are going to do technically 2. So I'm just going to go straight for 2 parameters, and we'll show you why right now. So go 2 parameters, and then you'll notice this box, it says single or all. We want to select all because we want both of these functions to happen before it fires the fan off. If you forget and you leave this here, either one of these functions will fire the fan, and you'll wonder why my fan is running. So you do all, right? The first one we want is we want to go up here and we want to do RPM. So we do RPM above, and I do like 500-600. And the reason for that is if you don't punch this in, when you turn the key and everything's live, again, your fan, it'll just fire it off because it's seeing that all the triggers, all the demands are met, so it goes here, fire the fan. So if you have RPM above 500, it won't fire the fan unless you're running, right? The second one we will do is coolant temperature, so CTS. So it's above, and we'll fire it off. Let's just say 190, right? We don't want to be above. At 190, we want the fan to kick on. If you click this is your secondary deactivation. If you don't have this, once it reaches 190, it'll just never shut off, right? So you have to click this, and then let's say like at 185, turn it back off. See, we're cruising down the road, we don't need it anymore, life's good. That is it. So this is the activation for it to look at this. So if you go up here and you click PWM, this is the table, right? Where it's going to look in order to run the fan. So first thing you need is type is fixed. The frequency for the Bosch fans is 100. There are different fans, are going to be different frequencies. You have to figure it out depending on what fan you're using, but for the fans that we use for my holder, it's 100. The table is going to be in duty cycle. And then now you have your X and Y axis, which is here, you know, X and then Y. This is Y, X is down at the bottom. So if we scroll over, move down, boom, right? So X, I like to do, this is just me, because I have an automatic transmission. We do line temperature, wherever that is, right here, boom, bam, line temp. and then Y, I like to do coolant temperature. Boom, right? So now, if your bubble moves up, it's coolant. If it moves to the right, it is line temp. And I put my transcooler on front of the car, so I like mine to look at both of those and not leave my transmission hanging out to dry. So now you notice my values are way off. So let's just say my top value is 240. We're baking balls, and then you can put your bottom one at wherever you want to start, right? I don't really want it negative. We'll just say 0 to make life easy. And then you'll notice, I'll show you because I punched it in, it's 240, and then the numbers are arbitrary. So you can select all of this, right? Select this whole thing, right click, whoops. So you select top one, you hold shift, select the bottom, right click, and then fill column values, and you click it, bam, and now you'll notice that everything is kind of cohesive. And you can change these values depending on how your car runs. So this will vary from person to person, but this will get you in the ballpark. And the same thing, this can be 0, right? And then this can be your maximum temp. Let's just say 250. We're cooking our transmission over here. Boom. And then it just filled everything in for me. So 0, 8, 70, 75, and so on. When you change these values, it's going to change where the bubble lives. And I'll show you on my car. We'll plug this in and fire it up, and you'll see a little yellow bubble floating around. Those are the cells that the computer is looking at, that your fan is looking at. So you have to select big parameters. So you would do a big selection here. And 0 means it's not going to run at all. I want to say like 20%. See how this changed to purple? It's going to be like your minimum. That'll fire the fan. Anything less than that, it won't run. And then say you're hot up here, the maximum you can run is going to be 95%, and that's wide open. And you'll notice in the table it's different colors. So that is an example of how you would set that up, right? So this will make it run. Again, this is your table. This is how hard the fan is going to run, and the little bubble is going to float around, and I'll give you guys a look at how that happens. But this is your input trigger, and this is a basic setup. So you're going to have your RPM above 500, and then your coolant, when your coolant goes 190, it'll kick the fan on, and by me kicking it on, it's going to look at our table, right? So at 190, if we came over here, it would be right in here. So it would run the fan at 195, and it would run this thing, and the bubble would move around. And when we got down to 185, which is down here, it would shut off, right? And then it wouldn't look at this anymore. And you could have all the numbers you wanted in here, but it wouldn't run it without the input triggers. So I hope you guys are following along. I hope that makes sense. So that is a basic how to get everything in there and a setup. So let me click over now. What I will show you is I will show you my setup, right? So if I go to my I/O, my outputs, smart fan, PWM, so this is what mine looks like. So everything up here is the same, right? My input triggers, all I have is RPM, and then I also have a switch, right? So I can make it run whenever, or the car running will fire it up. But I use this table, and you can see I have zeros, so my fan doesn't turn on at 180, but 185 it starts in, and then up, it ramps up. But also over here for my line temperature on my transmission, so even if my motor was cool but my transmission was warm, it would run the fan. And I do that because I have a transmission cooler on front of the car, and sometimes it doesn't match. Your transmission's getting hot and it's getting hung out to dry, and your fan will cool the motor down, but your transmission's still kind of working and cooking. So if it shuts it off, your transmission's not going to be happy. So I learned that, so that's what I'm going with this go around, but there are other ways to skin a cat. So let's go back here and I will show you another one. So this is my buddy Jason's War Wagon. You guys are probably familiar with that. This is his configuration, and his is a little different. So he does speed, right? So below 45 miles an hour, it's on. And then after 48 miles an hour, or below 45, it's on. Over 48, it basically turns off. And this is how he did his table. So again, everything up here is the same, except he has trinary switch and coolant. So this is coolant, but then he has trinary switch down here that will activate it because he has air conditioning. So he wants it to start the air conditioning and then run the fan when the AC is on, whether or not the trinary switch activates it. So basically this is its secondary activation. If it sees that, boom, it gets the thing fired off and rolling. So that is, again, one basic way to do it. Another way how I like to do it, and then this is how Jason likes to do it. So in the beginning, I would just play with it, do the basic setup, have it turn on and off, and then you can drive the car and see where it wants to live. But let's plug this thing in. I'll show you what I mean by the little yellow ball floating around. And then if I have enough fuel, maybe we'll let this thing idle long enough to kick the fan on and off, and I can show you how it'll kind of float and move around. Okay, we got the Malibu plugged in. I pulled the tune down. The computer is on, the car is essentially on. So if you go up to USB link, I can click that. And click OK here. And then you will see the little yellow dot, right? So we have the yellow dot floating around, and this is what it's looking at, and these are all zeros. So the fan obviously is not going to run. And then our trigger input, if you guys remember, we have 600. So we need 600 RPM, but I also have a switch. So if I flip the switch on, it'll bypass this because we have an OR. So to look at either one of these. So if we go back to the PWM setting, I can put a number in here. So let's just do, highlight this, and we'll put, I think 25, right? Click enter. So now the value is 25. So if I flip my fan switch on, there we go. So the fan is now running, and then you can hear my water pump as well, and then we can kick it up, right? So that's 25, this is 50. It runs a little harder, and then we can give it the beans, right? Let's go 95. So it really starts to move some air at 95. And then 0. Boom. Right? Turns it off. So let's see if you wanted it to just cruise around. I don't know if 15 will do it. I want to show you. Let's see if we can watch it register. So you see it register and then start to spin. That's a soft start. So there you go, that's 15. The thing is just barely cruising along. So that's kind of the power of the PWM fan. Again, we'll push 0. We'll turn my stuff off. So that will turn the water pump off. And that's that. Again, so it's back to 0. And again, if we fire the car off, it won't start chugging till like 185. I think I messed this up because 180 it should do like the 20, but you get the gist of it. And like I said, if you're wondering why your fan's not running or what it's looking at, when you go live, that little yellow bubble is going to tell you how hard that fan should be running. So if you have an issue, 9 times out of 10 it's a setting, because the wiring is very simple. It's power, ground, and then signal. So it's those and or and all your settings. So if you get stuck, I would just make it as basic as possible to get that thing to fire off, and then you can add all the complex ands and ors and all that fun stuff. So I know I'll get some questions. Please leave them in the comment section. I will get to them as much as I can. Hopefully somebody else, all you other guys on here that already run these, if you have different strategies, if you have other options, or if people have simple questions and you can answer them correctly, please do so and help me out, help a brother out, because I don't have all the time in the world to do questions, but I do want to troubleshoot. And if you really get stuck, you need some help, you can email us, you can write me on Instagram. I put my link on here all the time. I'm pretty active. Like if you shoot me a DM, usually I will get back to you pretty much in a timely manner with that stuff. But I appreciate you guys. I know it's a long-winded one. I hope you learned something. I hope you keep your car cool. It is summertime, it is around the corner. Get your fan holder, get everything thrown on there. Enjoy the benefits of a PWM fan. Till next time, you guys know what to do. I'm out.
Rolling through the streets, yeah, I'm the king of the block. Got that dragon dry style, make your whole city rock. Malibu gangster, with a touch of finesse. I'm burning rubber, raising hell, feel the heat, no stress. Turbo LS, under the hood, I'm moving quick. Nicky tires grip the road, make them stick like a trick. She, sloppy tune, we got a hit in 08. In the war performance parts all over the place. The bomb squad's